the spiral, why your growth was never supposed to be a straight line. Like a sunflower, look into its face. Now really look and count the spirals in the seed head. You'll actually find them running in two directions, clockwise and counterclockwise. And if you count them, you will almost always get two very specific numbers, 34 and 55, or 55 and 89. And it's never random, it's always those. Those numbers come from a sequence you've probably heard of. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89. Each number is the sum of the two before it, aka the Fibonacci sequence. As the sequence climbs the ratio between neighboring numbers, it settles towards a single value, 1.618. 1.618. It's the number that the Greeks call the golden ratio, and the Renaissance called the divine proportion. So welcome back to Solaris Sessions. I'm Melanie, the founder of Solaris Method, and today we're reading the most famous pattern in nature, the spiral, in the three ways that we always do: the science, the strategy, and my favorite, the correspondence, which is where it lands in your own life. So first, why does the sunflower count in this Fibonacci sequence? This is the part a lot of people never hear, and it's a lot better than just being in the mystery of it all. The sunflower has a packing problem. It needs to fit the absolute maximum number of seeds into a round head with absolutely no gaps and no crowding. And it's all while the head is still growing. Each new seed emerges from the center and pushes outward. So the question is, at what angle should each new seed appear? And at what angle should it appear relative to the one next to it, or to the one that just came in? So if the plant used a simple fraction of a circle, say like half of it, or a third, the seeds would stack onto the straight spokes with huge wasted gaps between them. The only way to never repeat, to never stack, to fill the space evenly forever, is to turn by an angle that can't be expressed as a neat, perfect fraction. It actually has to turn at the most irrational angle possible. And from what I understand, that angle is about 137.5 degrees, also known as the golden angle, derived directly from the golden ratio. So sit with that for a moment, right? The sunflower, it's not decorating itself with sacred geometry. The sacred geometry is the solution. It is mathematically the most efficient answer to the problem of continuous growth in a finite space. The pattern the mystics venerated for 3,000 years, and also the pattern the botanists measure in the lab, they're the same pattern. It's just been arrived at from two different directions. So that is the correspondence. And we're just getting into this. Okay, so now here's the sentence I want to carry out through this episode. The spiral is what growth looks like when it keeps the center. The spiral is what growth looks like when it keeps the center. What is your center? You got to know it. Otherwise, you're going to be all over the place. So look at how the nautilus builds its shell. Every chamber it adds is larger than the last. and the animal is genuinely growing its entire life. But every chamber has the same proportions, the same relationship to the center. The nautilus never abandons its origin. It grows around it. The galaxy does the same thing around its core. The hurricane around its eye. Growth that expands and holds the center. That is the spiral's signature. That's why in business and in all these motivational things, you always hear them talking about the why. You know, that Simon Sinek TED Talk, which is so good. He actually pointed out the center and said, hey guys, find your center. Okay, so let's dive into this and read it a bit more as strategy, because business culture teaches exactly the opposite shape. All right, business culture teaches us the line. And I'm not talking about Simon, I'm talking about business culture, right? Separate things. It teaches us the line. Up and to the right, right? Every month bigger than the last, forever and forever, the straight diagonal to the moon. And I don't know, I think this is ridiculous. After 14 years inside many companies, actually almost up to 20, well, 18 years, I don't know. Anyway, a lot of years inside many companies. The line is a lie, you guys. You guys should know this by now. Nothing in the living world grows in a straight line. Things that appear like a hockey stick chart or a rocket or even a tumor are either very early in a curve that will bend, or they are growth that has forgotten its center. So nature has a word for growth without a center. It isn't success. Growth without a center is cancer. That's one word for it. All right. I know that's a little dramatic, but so I've watched founders chase the line. Absolutely. Just scaling revenue while the center, the craft, the health, their health, the health of their relationships, or even the reason that they started all of this, it hollows out. Right? So they'll have a bunch of offers, they'll have partly built funnels, they'll have just messy systems, and someone in the middle of it who says, if this whole crazy thing stops, or if I stop, this whole crazy thing stops. It's all dependent on them. And that is line growth, you guys. It doesn't have a center to return to. The founder, him or herself, becomes the center, and then the founder becomes the sacrifice. And spiral growth works differently. You can build a business on it deliberately. 3 principles straight from geometry. So, first, return before you expand. The spiral revisits the same angle on every turn, just further out. And in business, that means you come back to the same fundamentals on every cycle of growth. The offer, the message, the client experience, the numbers. You don't fix your positioning once in year 1 and then you never look at it again. You return to it at every revolution. And each time you're touching it from a wider orbit with more experience. Isn't this amazing? You getting this? The founders who feel like they're going in circles are often actually spiraling. Same territory, higher turn. And the ones that refuse to revisit anything are the ones flying off on a massive tangent. In geometry and in business, a tangent is the line that leaves the circle and it never comes back often. Maybe it can find its way back eventually. Second, proportion over speed. The nautilus never adds a chamber 9 times bigger than the last one. Every stage of growth is in proportion to the structure that exists. In practice, your team grows in proportion to your systems. Your ad spend grows in proportion to your fulfillment. Your promises grow in proportion to your capacity. Most scaling disasters that I've witnessed weren't caused by too little ambition. they were disproportionate. A chamber the shell couldn't support. So when I design growth plans at this stage in my life, now that I can see these things, I think in those Fibonacci steps. And of course, you can too. Let this season's growth be roughly the sum of what the last 2 seasons built. Not what the market screams or all the noise is screaming. There's so much noise, you guys. And not what all the gurus promise. Learn discernment and hone in. And I think that's a good rule of thumb. Let this season's growth be roughly the sum of what the last 2 seasons built. Okay. So it actually sounds a lot slower. And thank God for that, right? Over 5 years, it actually ends up being faster because it has strength and it does not collapse. All right, third, the center is absolutely non-negotiable. Every spiral in nature is organized around a still point. The eye of the hurricane is actually calm. And that's not just a poetic detail, it's structural. It's the storm's power because it depends on that stillness at the core. And I've actually been in the eye of a hurricane. I was there for Hurricane Helene in Asheville, and it's a surreal experience. And I actually went outside, even though that might not have been smart. Anyway, let me carry on. So the strategic question that I'd stop this whole video to answer, if you, here's the question, right? That I just want you to think about. What is the still point in your business? What is the thing that does not change when everything else revolves? Sometimes that word is trust. Maybe a word comes to mind for you. What is the still point of your business? For some founders, it's a mission sentence or a word. And for some, it's a standard of care that they have that will just absolutely not break. And if you can't name yours in one breath, that's okay. It's just the actual work, and it should come before everything else. A spiral without its center isn't a spiral. It becomes a hot mess. So, okay. And now the third reading. Yay, the correspondence. Where is this pattern running in you? Here's where the spiral gets tender and vulnerable. Because if you've been doing any real inner work, any real actual growth, not just the performance of it, you've absolutely had this experience. You deal with something, you heal something, and then you move on. And then a year later, it's back. The same fear, the same insecurity, the same relationship pattern, the same doubt. And the voice in your head says, dang it, I thought I dealt with this. I'm definitely going in circles. I have not grown at all. I'm such a loser. What is wrong with me? Notice the spiral. The spiral says otherwise. The spiral says, give yourself some grace. You're actually a badass. You will pass the same angle on every revolution. That's how nature works. That's how the divine works. That's how geometry works. But it's never at the same distance from the center. So you're not meeting the old fear from an old place. You're meeting it one turn higher with everything you've built since. The material repeats, but you don't. Carl Jung, one of my favorite mentors, teachers, he built much of his psychology and his teachings on this exact shape. I'm going to try to say it. The circumambulation. The circumambulation of the center, he called it. It's the psychic circling its own core, approaching it again and again from ever new heights. And the ancients drew the same knowledge as a serpent coiling up a staff. I'm sure you've seen that. So the correspondence practice this week is take the thing in your life that keeps coming back, the pattern you're embarrassed that still visits you. Give yourself some grace. And instead of asking, why the heck am I back here again? Ask the spirals question. How is this turn different from the last one? What do I have now that I didn't have then? Maybe write the answer down or make a little audio of it or share it with somebody. Because I promise you the difference is there. And seeing it transmutes that shame into evidence. And it's evidence that you're doing great and you're not going in circles. You're actually climbing a spiral. And the view is only getting better and better and more exquisite. You're able to see more and more. And notice, because this is the whole method to notice. It's basically the same lesson at every scale. The business that returns to its fundamental each cycle, but yet wider each time. The person who returns to their old wound each season gets wiser each time. The seed head that returns to the same golden angle with every seed, fuller each time. One pattern, 3 altitudes, as above and so below. Let me leave you with the image I keep on my own wall from the shoreline where I live. There's a shell you'll find on this island, a simple whelk, and if you cut it lengthwise, there's a spiral perfect as any diagram in any sacred text. That animal never studied geometry in that shell. It never optimized anything. It just did the next honest unit of growth in proportion around its center every day of its life. And it ended up holding that gorgeous golden ratio in its own body. That's the promise of the spiral for your business and for you. You don't have to force the pattern. You don't have to force the pattern. You do have to take inspired action. You do have to stop violating the pattern. It's not a straight line. Grow in proportion. Return to the center before you expand and keep that center still. And the beauty, absolute beauty, takes care of itself. It was always going to. And the moment you stop demanding that straight line from a universe that has never once drawn a perfect straight line, that's when you really start to flow and come alive. So, isn't that amazing? It's the good news, right? Next episode, we go underground, literally. We're going to go underground into the network of fungal threads beneath every forest, where the trees are trading resources through a living web older than money. And it will change how you think about referrals, how you think about community, and what your business is actually rooted in. I'm not editing that out. I'm Melanie. This is Solaris Method, the strategic and the sacred. And everything you want to know about what I do is found at solarismethod.com. Keep the center, keep coming back to the center, and the spiral will do the rest.